Yeah, so before this, we had covered the security topics, which were
Hmm.
related to authentication and access. More like someone
Yes.
who is not a correct person who's trying to.
Hmm.
Uh, so now here moving to the next kind of security. So the next will be here that so if a person uh, who has received like so for example if a hacker has come and he has uh, got the correct credentials and everything, okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
a hacker joins, because right now when you expose APIs and all that stuff, right, you will not know
Hmm.
what kind of person who is, right, who is what kind of
Hmm.
person, because there can be third party developers also. So someone who is
Hmm.
joining, who has joined, who has got the valid credentials, valid what this thing and all, okay, and he has received the tokens and get, I mean, he has done all the things which were supposed to be which were supposed to be done and all those stuff, okay, and he
Hmm.
has got the token as per the process. Now
Hmm.
the problem is that once he gets the token and all as per the requirement and all, okay, that person might try to that person might try to gain unauthorized access, okay. So how he
Hmm.
will do, he might try to do different kind of attacks, okay. So those are known as content based attacks, okay. So
Hmm.
he might want
Hmm.
to do something with the data that he's sending, that is sending from the consumer side, okay. He might try to send something which can lead to some kind of system down or something like that, or unauthorized access of the data, okay.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
one of the most common one is, the most popular attack vectors are most popular attack vectors is SQL injection attacks. I don't know if you are
Hmm.
heard or not, because it's
Yeah. Yeah.
very
Heard.
common
Heard.
thing,
Yeah. Very common. Yep.
right? So SQL injection attack. So as per SQL injection attack, you might be aware what person will do
Hmm.
is they will try to send SQL query, right? In
Yes.
the
Yes. Hmm.
request, they will try to send SQL query, and using the SQL query, they will try to get unauthorized access. Or even worse,
Hmm.
what they can do is they can write a drop table, right? Drop,
Hmm.
delete, that kind of statement, right? That
Hmm.
can even
Hmm.
add in the data loss, right? That can result in the data
Hmm.
loss, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
because of those kind of things, that it can be problem.
Hmm.
Okay, so so that is one kind of attack, right? Another one. So
Hmm.
apart from SQL injection, other kind of script injection can happen. Like people can send you some link or something, right? People can store some
Hmm.
harmful or whatever that your user can click or something like that, right? So any kind of
Hmm.
things, right? Okay,
Hmm.
and then you have so that is one kind of attack. Then other is uh, they can try to manipulate the structure of the JSON and XML payload. Okay, what
Hmm.
is mean by
Hmm.
that? So if the JSON you are expecting only 5 fields, for example, they might send you
Hmm.
50 fields, lot of
Hmm.
garbage field
Hmm.
which you are not even expecting, like this. Okay,
Hmm.
or they
Hmm.
can send a type, change the type of data. So you might be expecting say boolean, they might send you a string. You are
Hmm.
expecting a string, they will send you array. That kind of
Hmm.
thing. They
Hmm.
can do all kind of things. JSON inside JSON, object inside object, multi-level object. Those kind of things. Okay, so
Hmm.
they can basically play around with the structure. Give you
Hmm.
a wrong structure. They might send a very large data, some header with
Hmm.
very large value, thousands of character or something like some payload which can have thousands of character, which is not needed, right? That kind of thing.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
same thing they can do with the XML also. The similar thing they can play around with, and they can send the XML, right? So they can do that
Hmm.
kind of thing. So idea is that they can try to bring down your parser, because eventually
Hmm.
internal, right, after APG, when you call microservice or whatever, SOAP service,
Hmm.
microservice, eventually it will be a Java code or .NET code, right? And they will have a parser.
Hmm.
You write a
Hmm.
JSON parser or XML parser, correct? Eventually, when go to the technical level, they will write a parser only, right, to parse the incoming JSON and incoming XML. So they will try to bring that into parser, okay, and that is called application level DOS attack. Only that specific
Okay.
parser or application state are open, okay. So these are
Okay.
two kind of content-based attacks, okay.
Okay.
So now, when you had previously, when everything was inside the network, there was no third-party thing, there was no internet involved in the API calls and all, right? at that time the backend developers, when I say backend, means the service, the people who are developing microservice or service, okay, like the developing in Java, Node.js, whatever any programming language. So those people who are developing the backend service, right? Those people never had to worry about these attacks because obviously it is the system was within the firewall, correct? So everything was within
Mm-hmm.
the firewall. There was no internet access, no third party developer, and all those stuff. You know, this is a
Hmm.
trusted application. People not do all this, so all this
Hmm.
kind of thing. However, now because the problem is that you are exposing APIs which are available through internet or something, right? So what you want to do is you ideally you the best practice is to try to block these attacks on Apigee Edge. You cannot trust the
Hmm.
backend team and obviously backend developers who are developing on the backend side, they also have to make sure that they are having a proper what you say proper validation in place, right? They also should do the validation, okay, using any kind of whatever tools they are having or whatever libraries they are having. Using that, they should do the validation. However, on Apg we cannot trust that backend will always do, right? So on Apg itself we
Hmm.
should try to make sure that nothing of that kind of nothing of that sort goes to the backend, okay. So we should try to
Hmm.
uh, block most of these things as much possible. Obviously you cannot block everything, but as much possible you should be able to block on Apg, okay,
Hmm.
so that your backend is protected, okay. Now
Hmm.
Apg
Hmm.
has the policy which which will help to mitigate these kind of attacks, okay. So we'll see what are the policies. So but before this there are some validations that we need to do. So we have to check for valid input. So usually in normal scenario, input validation ideally backend team will do, because sometimes they might share us the specification, or sometimes they will say just give a pass through, whatever comes we will validate. Many times that can do it.
Hmm.
However, we should try to check with them, I mean talk to them and try to get as much information about the data, and we should try to do validation on Apg layer itself, okay, using JavaScript or something, whatever, okay.
Hmm.
Now Apg has the policies like JSON, extract variable policy. In extract variable policy, you can extract the data from the JSON path or XPath, whatever, from the payload. Okay, you can give JSON path, XPath. You can extract the data, and then you can write a JavaScript, or it is sometimes simple condition. You can raise code. Sometimes you can write a JavaScript, whatever. It depends on, it depends like API to API, right? So
Hmm.
we can do the validation, and also if you backend is doing some kind of input validation also, because some input validation we can do on Apg. Sometime if backend is doing the validation, then backend might provide you error response. Now you have to make sure whatever is coming from backend, you are doing a filtering. You have to make sure their backend error structure, right? Whatever error structure that is being sent from backend, it is either it is same to your whatever your structure, or else you might have to parse the backend response, rewrite the error payload as per your standard, right? And you can forward to client, okay. So you should be
Hmm.
able to handle the backend error scenarios, okay, and you should be able to write it from this, okay, rewrite, okay, whenever needed, okay. So we already talked about SQL injection attack.
Okay, can you
So
just go back once again to that sheet,
sure, sure,
to that slide? So the last point where you're saying if you leave the backend responsible for input validation, be
correct,
prepared to handle rewrite validation error messages coming from the backend. So this
correct,
means that see, from Apigee, a request is coming, okay, to the backend,
yeah,
okay.
correct,
Uh,
yeah,
so backend would take the response in a particular. I mean, it should match the fields, right? The request, and if it does not match, like when you say rewrite validation, or where do you validate rewrite? Where do you handle this? I'm not able to understand.
yeah. So you can put a policy on Apg to extract the payload from backend response, okay,
Uh
and
huh.
create your own message. You can use assign message policy or extract variable policy, or you can use a JavaScript policy. Either is fine, okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you can parse the backend error, parse the backend error messages, okay, and then rewrite as per whatever. So you might have an error structure which will have four fields, for example, right? In your error
Hmm.
scenario, you are sending four fields, okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
Backend you only sending two fields, correct.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
they are missing out two fields, correct. You have to still put two other fields because all your
Huh.
errors have a common standard, right? Because client will
Huh.
otherwise their APIs will break, right? Their integration will break.
Huh.
So that is what.
Huh.
So you can do a, if it is simple, straightforward. What you do is you get a accept variable, you copy, you use accept variable policy, it will extract the backend response, and then you use assign message policy. It will create a new response payload, okay, and then it will forward to the uh, consumer, okay. Okay,
Okay,
if it
so
is a
FPG, so FPG itself will do that, right? So that's what you're trying to say. So
in
whatever,
APG, you can write policies to do that, yes, to handle the
yeah,
process.
okay, okay,
Okay,
got it. Okay.
so and that
So
what policies
basically,
to
I
use?
just want to say that, see, for example, a consumer is sending a request. Okay, the
Correct,
format may be different to what the backend understands. Correct?
correct,
Or
yeah, yeah.
or and the backend, when it sends the response, the consumer should again understand it, right? To understand, in FPG itself, we will revalidate the code and then send it to FPG, right?
Correct. Even if the backend is sending in a JSON that we need, but if it is not using the proper JSON, right? So
Uh,
something is wrong with the JSON. So that's why we have to do the adaptation, right? Transformation, adaptation,
correct,
whatever it is,
correct.
what you have to
Uh,
do. Okay. So that's
mhm, mhm. Okay.
correct.
So everything is done in Apigee there.
Yes, it
Okay.
ideally. Yes.
Okay. Mm.
Sometime backend also support the same format and all, and they ask like whatever we are sending, let it go. So that also is fine
Mhm.
as long as we are
Okay.
adhering to the common. So if sometime a
Okay.
backend team and APG team are working very closely and they know both of them are on the same page about all kind of error structure, everything, okay,
Hmm.
then you can allow. But many times that is not the case, right? So APG team will have
Yeah.
their own standard, backend team might have their own. Okay, like this.
Yeah. Yeah. So my project also is something that way only. So this
Yeah,
evolution migration, what I was saying, that is the backend, right? The SOR. So when
yeah,
the from application, when the request come, they do some adaptation. Okay, they do this. This BA creates one mapping sheet. Okay, and then
yeah, yeah.
they give it to the developer. So the developer,
Hmm.
matches the field how the evolution SOR is having. It matches to the request. So they will match the request and response field in a Excel sheet, and then
Hmm.
I guess that is done in, and that code is applied in Apigee, so that the request is again goes through Apigee and the consumer understands it, right? That is how it is done.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. No, I'm just trying to understand. They are discussing all this, but I was not able to understand much where it is being done. Okay.
Sure, sure, yeah. Yeah. So now we are talking about dangerous input. So obviously we talked about SQL injection attack. So I won't go in detail. To prevent against SQL injection or any other kind of injection attacks, APG has the policy called regular expression protection policy. So it is a regex protection policy. And that policy can detect such kind of pattern and it can block. Okay. So what you do, this is a simple syntax. Okay, a simple example of a policy sample. So here what you can do, you provide a source. Most of the time you only do it on the request, correct? So source will be request, you don't, response is trusted source, correct?
Hmm.
Response you don't have to worry only from the incoming because that is coming from a untrusted place. You put this thing, so source is usually request. Then ignore, so yeah, variable is not present, you want to ignore that, that need to, that is fine. Now you can give any variable, so either you can provide a variable, so if you want to check the whole request content, okay, in whole request anywhere this comes, block it, that also you can do. So you can give variable name request content and it will look for the pattern, because SQL injection attack and all, they will have a particular pattern. Most of these attacks have a particular pattern, right? So you do a
Hmm.
pattern match. So these are like SQL injection, like SQL patterns, like SQL statements, right? Delete, exec, drop, alter, whatever, right? So those kind of things.
Hmm.
So you can check for certain patterns. Okay. Same for SQL and same for other kind of injection attack also. You can check for patterns and all. It will match. Okay. It will check if the pattern is matching. It will block. If pattern doesn't match, it will let it go. Okay. And if you want to validate against a certain fields, because you know that okay, in other fields it is not important, only in certain fields we have to do that kind of check. So that also you can do. So you can define the JSON path or X path or something. So here you can see, right, in the JSON payload, JSON path, you can give the JSON path. It will look extract that data from that JSON path and it will check, okay, if it's there or not. So you can do it from the JSON XML query, URL, payload, whatever, anywhere you can, yeah, you can mm, check for certain patterns. Okay,
Hmm.
so that is the regex protection policy. Another very important aspect is to validate the correct content type. Okay, sometimes people don't see, so because when the request comes, and there is a data. So especially post call or put call, because in these two consumer will send data, correct? So when there is a post
Hmm.
call or put call, then customer or the whatever client, the client application has to set the correct content type header. Content type will
Hmm.
tell what kind of content is coming. So by default for application JSON, for JSON data, application slash JSON is the correct content type. So there are some predefined content types which are there as per the HTTP protocol itself. Okay, so JSON is for application JSON, and for XML there are some other. So like application XML, text XML, application slash custom type plus XML, or if it is a plain text data, you can say text plain, or any other binary data, you can set binary content also. Different content types are there. Most of the time we
Okay.
will deal with application JSON. That is the most common one, or application XML in some scenario. Others are very
Okay.
very rare, not regular, right?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so what, because sometimes the APG policies, especially when you are XML parsing, JSON parsing, or regex protection, these kind of policies, they need the content type header to be set correctly. If the content type header is not set up correctly, then these policies will skip. So it is very important before we apply these kind of policy where we are extracting data, transforming data, or regex protection, whatever those kind of things. Okay, when we are doing those kind of things and using the policies, before these policies we should do a content type validation. So we can either do a simple check like this, a raise fault policy. Sorry, we can have a
Hmm.
raise fault policy like this will throw error
Hmm.
that okay, this content type is not correct and all those stuff. And you can have a
Hmm.
condition. So either you can put a raise fault policy, or you can write a JavaScript. It depends on what is the, there's sometimes there is a
Hmm.
common validation. You write a single JavaScript which can do all kind of common validation like this. Okay, and it will throw.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, so that it can send it. So yeah. So yeah, so that's why it is very important that content type header is set correctly, and we must always validate it. Okay, in the post and put call especially, always remember to do that. Now another one is for XML. There is a message validation policy, because we don't deal much with XML or especially SOAP data. So I have not used this policy. I don't remember I have used it ever or not. Yeah,
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
might be very rare, because this is obviously
Hmm.
mostly we deal with this data. We don't deal with SOAP. So you can, this
Hmm.
is like a SOAP message validation. So if you want to verify a SOAP message, if there is a your
Hmm.
APGs have supporting SOAP, and it is for SOAP, then you can verify against WSDL file or a schema file, whatever. So incoming XML and all you can put. Or if you don't provide any schema, okay, then at least incoming request, if there is a XML or JSON, whatever XML or JSON is there, is it a well-formed XML or well-formed JSON or not? That also it can verify. But obviously we never use this policy. Other policies are there that we do. Okay,
Hmm.
so that's why. So this is like very rarely used. I mean, I'm not sure
Hmm.
in your scene also if you have to use
I
only.
also don't think. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Now next kind of attacks is the parsing attack. So we already discussed, right? So XML and JSON payload can be crafted to overwhelm the parser. So they can
Hmm.
create such that it will overwhelm the parser which is there on the service layer, right? On the service layer,
Hmm.
which is the backend of APG. So on the backend of APG, they might want to break the parser, okay? And that way that
Okay.
parser will down. So that kind of that service
So
specific that will
parser
be.
is something from Apigee when it's going to the backend, is it?
No, on the back end. So
Oh,
when you prod a JSON, right? If you are using Spring Boot, for example, Java, you are using Spring service. Okay.
okay.
So if you make a call to the Spring, in the Spring it will parse the JSON, correct? You will parse the payload,
Hmm.
right? Spring will have the parser, right? Or same when you are using C sharp, C sharp will have a JSON parser, correct? To parse
Mm-hmm.
the incoming JSON. Okay.
Okay.
So that in the so whatever service you are using, whatever Java or .NET, whatever programming language that you are using, okay, they
Hmm.
will have a either XML or JSON parser, right? Because data is either
Hmm.
XML or JSON, correct?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they will try to break that XML or JSON parser which is being used by the programming language.
Okay. Okay. Understood. Understood. Got it.
Okay.
Hmm.
So these policies provide protection against such kind of things. So what you can do is you can put limits on the payload. Okay, what is the
Hmm.
maximum value on this maximum value, that maximum thing, that kind of thing, and that you can
Hmm.
decide based on the sample. So you will already have the open API spec. In open API spec, you will know what are the fields, right? What are the
Hmm.
maximum? What is this minimum length? How many level of JSON is there? Right? Is it only just 5 fields, or there is a JSON inside JSON, or array inside array, or JSON inside? That kind of thing, right? So you will get to know,
Hmm.
right? Based on
Hmm.
that, open API specs and all, and some sample data that is provided, you can decide and you can set the limits. Okay.
Okay.
So these policies obviously should be run before the XML or JSON parsing for obvious reason, right? Because first you have to
Mm-hmm.
protect against this thing, then only you can do XML or JSON parsing. Right? That's why.
Okay.
So So now for JSON, we have a JSON threat protection policy, JTP. We call it JTP, JSON threat protection. Okay. So here you can see in the sample policy, you can see you define the source, that is fine. Then you can define array element count. What is the number of elements in array? Correct. Container depth
Mm,
is like object inside object. So you have
mm,
multiple level of JSON, correct, or multiple level XML, right? So that's why. So
mm,
container depth is till what level you are allowing. Okay. Object inside
mm,
object. Then object entry count. In a single object, how many entries will be there, right? So how
mm,
many fields are there? How many fields are there?
mm,
Okay.
mm,
And then object entry name length of the name. So this is the
mm,
name, correct? Name of the length.
mm,
So what is the maximum length you are allowing? This is the name, this is value, right? JSON field name and field value,
mm,
right? So what is the
mm,
maximum length of JSON field? Okay, that is there.
mm,
Then, string value length. If the your string value, what is maximum length of the string value? You can define. Okay, so these kind of things you are applying the in the incoming JSON. You are applying the limits. If anything is breaking the limit, if someone is sending very large data or anything, you can block it.
mm,
Okay,
mm.
that's why. So these limits are checked without use of a parser on APG. So that's why it can stop it anything. Okay.
Okay.
And that's why, so if it is a, yeah, so whatever limit you are setting, if someone some request is within the limit, then only it will allow. If anything is breaking the limit, it will throw error. Okay, usually
Okay.
then we write a section called, we will cover that in chapter number 6. We have the error handling section. Okay, so then we
Okay.
will write an error handling section for that. Okay, fault rule.
Mm.
In the fault rule, we rewrite the error message as per more meaningful name. By default, it will throw some APG, it will throw like this, some JSON
Okay.
like this. Okay, but obviously
Okay.
we rewrite the error message as in our fault handling to give a more meaningful message. We will cover that fault handling also later on
Mm.
chapter number 6, that we will see.
Okay.
Like JSON thread protection, XML also has the similar XML thread protection. Now XML structure is obviously different from JSON, correct? So for
Mm,
XML,
mm,
the limits are defined in a different way. For example, in the name limit, so you have a name limit section. In the name limit, you can define element name, attribute name, right? JSON doesn't have attribute and all those, correct? XML will
mm,
have element, attribute, namespaces, correct? So namespace, prefix limit, processing instruction, target limit, those kind of limits on the name. And then structure. So node depth is node inside node, right? XML
mm,
node, XML tag inside tag, right? Till what level you
mm,
can go. So node depth,
mm,
attribute count, namespace count, child count, all kind of things. So these are on the structure limits and value limits. So text value, what is the maximum limit? Attribute value, namespace URI value, comment value, processing instruction target value, all kind of thing. Okay. So these things are defined for the XML. So in case of XML, you do apply all these rules. However, XML set protection very rarely used. That's why that's why in XML I have not. I don't remember I have. Hello.
I see somebody has joined.
Oh, hi.
Mhm.
Uh,
Can you able to hear me?
Venki, yes, we
Yeah.
can hear you. Uh,
Actually, there is a training going on. We have another 10-15 minutes. Can you join after that, please? Or check with Sumaya, please?
So, and meeting.
your training probably will start around 8, right? We still have some more time. This is a
Yes, got
previous
it, got
session.
it. I'm leaving.
Yeah, you can join. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have it.
Yeah, he left.
Anyway, so this is a lab. We will do that lab tomorrow. Okay.
Hmm.
And then
Okay.
this two lab, there is a one for we will do, and another one is that you can do on your own by following the instructions
Okay.
and all.
Hmm.
Other things,
Okay.
anyways, just quickly close it. Anyways, this is the last part. Anyways, so
Hmm.
for input kind of validations, there are different kind of input validations are there. Okay, one
Hmm.
is the
Hmm.
like range validation that we can do. So it is not
Hmm.
that always done on APG. It can be APG or can be backend, but at least somewhere it should be done. So at least.
Okay.
So, and it depends on the API to API. Some API it is applicable, some not. But these are like the maximum kind of validation that we can do. So one is the
Hmm.
range validation, where we have numerical range or string length validation. We can pick from the list like enumeration, right? Enum, that I don't know if you have used around enum kind of thing, where you have a certain list like days. If the day come, the day should be one of the 7 values, right? Like this, or month should be one of
Hmm.
these 12 values, like
Hmm.
this, right? So
Hmm. Hmm.
the list, or data type validation, that is very common, integer, float,
Hmm.
string, whatever. Schema
Hmm.
validation, so that anyways we do. Okay, we can do based on the schema thing. And required field validation, header validation, and field interaction. So for example, if one field is x, then other field should come like this. Okay, so
Hmm.
if,
Hmm.
like for example, person type is employee, then business unit must be set, or department must come like this. Okay, like this.
Yeah.
It is
Okay.
or and obviously dangerous values, so SQL injection patterns and all those stuff. Okay, so all
Hmm.
kind of things, these are the validation we should be done. Some of them will be in Apigee, some of them would be in the backend, but eventually in combination this is all should be done. Apigee has another policy now, it is open API spec validation, that can actually, if you have open API specification, and that policy itself can now verify against or do a lot of validation which is using the schema. Okay, so that also you can use it, that is very useful. These slides are a bit older, but that policy is there so that you can use it. Okay, so there is open API spec validation policy. Okay, that you can use for, so that also can do a lot of things. In the open API spec, if you define the restriction, okay, what type and everything we define, right, and based on that it can do. Okay?
Hmm.